What's up, everybody? Welcome back. We're here to talk about the full season of Daredevil Born Again. I was lucky enough and very grateful to receive all the screeners for this entire season 1 of Daredevil Born Again to be able to review for you all here. Something I want to explain right off the bat is I am a comic book fan. As you can see, we've talked about some comic book stuff on this channel, on my TikTok, and other podcasts I do in that comic book space. And unfortunately, though, I've sinned. Matt would be upset with me. I've not watched the original Netflix series. It's just something I never got around to. I wanted to in prep for this show, but it just didn't happen. So I am going into this very, very fresh without a strong connection, a strong emotional connection to the original Netflix series. While that might trouble some of you, I did want to offer this perspective of, I feel like as someone who's going in fresh, I'm able to absorb it for it as it is and not with any sort of emotional connection or expectation. Not that those are wrong, but hopefully I'm able to give you a authentic and objective review enough of this show without any sort of blinders or expectations. So hopefully this video comes across as really authentic, and either as a massive fan of the show, it makes you excited for one of your favorite things ever to continue, or as someone who is just deciding if they want to watch this new superhero show, is this a good place to jump on? So all I'm trying to offer here. Although I do want to clarify, it's not like I'm unfamiliar with the character. I'm actually a decent fan of the director's cut of the Ben Affleck movie. I think that movie's okay. I've read the story The Man Without Fear by Frank Miller and John Romita Jr. Really amazing comic book. And Daredevil also appears in Spider-Man a lot. He's actually a prime factor in one of my favorite stories ever called The Death of Jean DeWolf. So I got some Daredevil knowledge here. So I feel like I'm going into it at least knowing enough about the character. Right off the bat, what I'll say is this is a damn good season of comic book television. It comes out of the gate absolutely swinging, delivering probably the boldest, the most, the ballsiest first 15 minutes I've seen in a comic book series. So I give it a lot of credit for immediately hitting you with a sledgehammer and then slowly picking up the pieces to kind of put you on the runway of what the direction of the story is going to be. Just a light synopsis as some housekeeping here. The show follows events several years after the original series of Daredevil. We see Matt Murdock in this situation, stopping his activities as Daredevil. He is done being a vigilante. He is more focused on justice from the courtroom in his role as a lawyer. And at the same time, we see Wilson Fisk returning to the action and running for mayor of New York City. And it's those two characters, and more importantly, those two performers, those two actors, who make this entire series for me. I have not seen a lot of these two. I've seen Charlie Cox in No Way Home and She-Hulk, and I've seen Vincent D'Onofrio's Kingpin in an episode of Hawkeye where I thought he was pretty unremarkable. But in this show, these two gentlemen are absolutely sensational. They are made for these roles. They were born for these roles. They own every single minute of the screen, and just when they are doing their thing, they are so committed. They have these roles so down, the nuances they carry, the certain decisions they make. It's all so incredible. You are seeing two people who have lived in these roles and have perfected them and truly found, I think, fully realized versions. And what's cool about that is they feel like fully realized versions and performances, and yet look at the more story we have in front of us. And I just want to especially highlight Charlie Cox here. I immediately think of him as being on a top 10 list somewhere of the all-time great comic book role castings, because this guy, not even to compare, just the depth he brings to every scene. It feels like the way he plays this blind man, and yet it's this lawyer who has so much charisma and charm and energy, and then he has these moments of rage, moments where he's a badass, and then moments where he's incredibly emotional and broken. I mean, throughout this whole series, Charlie Cox is doing so much with this role. It's absolutely remarkable. Now I see why not only people love him, and I'm sure 3 seasons of him is a masterpiece. Trust me, I'm going to be going back really soon, but I just feel like I understand why there's so much love for this version of the character, and really the show as a whole. You just feel it. Everyone feels like they understand the assignment. Now I understand why there was such a clamor for the show to come back, and why Kevin Feige realized and was smart enough to go, we need to run it back with all this stuff. I also want to caution you as the viewer and share that I am really highlighting these two performances and these two characters, and I said they're what make the show, is because really this show requires a lot of patience, in my opinion. After that insane opening I'm talking about, the show really slows down. I'm not going to quite say there's a full-on pacing issue, but I do think the pacing is suspect in places, and I think there are moments early on where you can tell where some of the reshoots and some of the changes happen. In case you didn't know, this show got completely overhauled. Maybe not completely overhauled, but really rewritten and reshaped with new showrunners and new creative talent right after the writer's strike, I believe, and they made certain decisions to bring some people back who maybe weren't going to be back, right, and kind of tried to pick up a few more things from the original series. So I do think there are moments during the season where you can feel that and where you could kind of see where some reshoots happen. However, I still think the material they're giving these characters, primarily Matt Murdock, just continue to be so magnetic and so engaging, and he owns and sells all of it, that he and Vincent D'Onofrio as well are both able to really keep you moving forward and keep you engaged. And I will say this patience does pay off in several moments throughout. There are still your fair share of exceptional battles. There's a fight sequence in episode 1 that is absolutely outstanding from top to bottom. There are a few more really epic ones throughout the season as well, and there are also these many shocking moments that happen. So while there's a lot of quiet time, while there's a lot of character building and work, you still have your periods of epic Marvel coolness, trust me. In addition to those physical cool rewards, there is so much reward in the theme and what this show is trying to say in this narrative. So like I said, it does require patience, but I promise you, when you absorb it all, there is really rich stuff happening here. The idea of the mask and what that means, right? The burden that Matt Murdock is going through, always being someone who believes in retribution. But what does that retribution look like in the face of justice in this current New York, right? What is the right thing to do in wake of tragedy? Is the city better one way or the other, right? And his mirror opposite, his polar opposite, his sworn adversary, Wilson Fisk, is trying to use all of that and take control of the city, right? Someone who's trying to impose himself, his will, his beliefs in the people of New York. It's very interesting to see how this like political sensationalism that we have now is playing out with young characters he's recruiting, the way he's trying to use social media and other media outlets, different sort of spinning of the truth. There's more of your classic corruption stuff, and then the commentary on the system in terms of all the legal stuff with Matt. There are so many moving pieces, and while sometimes it feels disjointed, and sometimes I will say I don't know if all these episodes flow together well, could be a reshoot, rewrite thing, who knows, there still is enough payoff for all this that makes a lot of this series really satisfying. Something else I think that's awesome is this New York, this MCU New York feels incredibly lived in and fleshed out just from the series alone. I think there's this really cool thing they do with this younger character who is trying to capture the voices of New York and trying to showcase the citizens more. And of course, as Wilson Fisk is running for office, right, what do you have to do? Gain the trust of the people, get votes, right? So we're seeing a lot more pockets of New York, the stuff he does as mayor, and then Matt kind of operating in the legal system of New York City. It's so interesting because we've been in MCU New York before, but it feels like we haven't like spent time there since like early MCU. I don't even really know. I really have no memories of it. And this one feels very lived in, and it feels like this new, fresh new pocket of the MCU that they're going to spend some time in, and it feels like it's going to be a playground for a lot of really cool ideas to be explored. I do also want to say it is incredibly violent this season. There is some grotesque, really graphic end results of some fight sequences. There's some like cruel acts of physicality that were never over the top for me, but they definitely push the limits here. This is pretty R-rated stuff for the MCU, which I know we saw some of the stuff in Daredevil, but there was that comedy aspect to it. No, this is nitty-gritty, dark, violent, and it works. It does have some pretty nice style too. It has this like 2000 style. There's some really stylized cinematography in places, especially when Matt is using his heightened senses. And I think the score from the Newton brothers is pretty solid as well. It definitely keeps things moving. I don't want to say it wasn't fully satisfying, but I also can't say I was fully satisfied. So I think it left me with enough satisfaction to where I'm really hungry for season 2, but I am keeping my eyes open for a lot of payoff and more of a tighter story, I think, the next time around. So if I've enjoyed it, hopefully people just checking it out for the first time are going to enjoy it too. And I think if you are a fan of the show, there's enough people I know who've seen the original, who got the screeners for this, who watched it. A very good friend of mine, his name is Nick Zenick. He's the co-host on the Vigilante 1939 podcast that I'll plug here. It's where we talk about some more comic book stuff. Feel free to check that out. He really loved this, and he's a big fan of the original series as well. So hopefully, I think there might be some choice and then some things that maybe you diehard fans of the show aren't going to love right away, but I think there's enough to keep you around, and I think it will be worth your buy-in by the end of it. Very much enjoyed the series. I do think it is at the top of the Marvel MCU show. I think this, WandaVision, Loki feel like the top 3 in my opinion. I'm going to give this, though, a very solid 7 out of 10. But of course, I would love your thoughts on Daredevil Born Again. I know the first 2 episodes are already out. Give me your thoughts on those. And then all season, if you want to come back to this, or if you don't come to this video until you finished all the episodes, just give me your thoughts on the show as a whole. What you loved, what you liked, maybe what you didn't like, and what you're hoping for in season 2. Can't wait to be spending the next 9 weeks with you all talking about this show. It's going to be really fun. So I hope you enjoyed Daredevil Born Again. I know I did. And I can't wait to hang out with you all again very soon.